The situation surrounding Ghislaine Maxwell continues to raise serious concern. Recently, the Trump-era Bureau of Prison quietly transferred Maxwell, former her cell in Tallahassee, Florida, to minimum security facility in southeast Texas, known as Prison Camp Barron. This location is often described as one of the most comfortable federal prison placement, typically reserved for non-violent, white collar offenders. Given Maxwell conviction for sex trafficking, her eligibility for such a transfer is highly questionable. This move appeared to be part of a broader deal orchestrated during the Trump administration. Reports indicate that Maxwell was recently granted Queen for a day, Queen for a day, or prefer immunity or legal status that protects her from prosecution based on what she disclosed during meeting with federal prosecutor. Notability: Trump's former criminal defense attorney Ted Blanche, who later became a top official at the Department of Justice (DOJ), reportedly met with Maxwell for nearly 10 hours over 2 days to discuss the terms. Many speculate that Maxwell is now seeking a pardon or sentence communication in exchange for cooperating with authorities. So longer as her cooperation avoids implicating Donald Trump himself, be potentially naming others while deflecting from Trump ties to Jeffrey Epstein. Maxwell may be attempting to secure DNC or full claimness. Her prison transfer to a low security, almost summer camp like setting following the amenity grant suggests this may already be in motion, just as some had long predicted. Whether this is a legitimate legal strategy or troubling example of political favoritism and cover up remains to be seen. Ghislaine Maxwell, a convicted sex trafficker implicated in one of the most disturbing abuse networks in modern history, is now reportedly receiving surprisingly favorable treatment under the Trump era. Department of Justice efforts appear to have been made to negotiate with her, including granting immunity for certain statements and transferring her to a low security facility more situated to white collar offenders than convicted sex traffickers. This stands in stark contrast to how the Trump administration handled urgent domestic crises. For example, aid and federal support during the Texas flood flash were delayed and several cases critical emergency resources for the disaster stricken communicate across the US were similarly lacking. Meanwhile, a highly level DOJ official was swiftly dispatched to meet with Maxwell. Critics point out that Donald Trump's own record found liable for sexual abuse in civil court and convicted on 34 felony counts of falsifying business record makes this pattern of behavior even more concerning. Trump's long-standing association with Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein is well documented, dating back decades. In fact, reports from early as 1997, including article in the Sunday Mirror, suggested Maxwell played a central role in introducing young women not only Epstein but to Trump himself. This broader context raises serious questions about priorities, accountability, and the unequal application of justice. Now, despite being a convicted sex trafficker, Ghislaine Maxwell has secured a transfer to a minimum security facility, essentially a prison camp alongside white collar criminal like Elizabeth Holmes, and Jennifer Shaw. It's the kind of place for remove from what one might expect from someone convicted of such serious crime. And here's what else we have learned. The FBI has reportedly redacted or removed Donald Trump's name from Epstein file. Keep in mind, during Trump administration, his team appointed hundreds of FBI agents and DOJ lawyers to comb through those very documents, raising serious concern about interference, cover-up, and selective transparency. The goal was never to release the Epstein file. It was erase Donald Trump name from them. Now we know that when an FBI employee, Michael Saddle, raised concern about this, he was given an ultimatum: resign immediately or be fired. Saddle, who worked in the records department, reportedly questioned why Trump's name was being redacted. In response, he was pushed out, highlighting a major cover up happening in plain sight. Earlier this week, while abroad Air Force One, Donald Trump casually admitted that Epstein had stolen car from Mar-a-Lago, referring to one of the victims, Virginia Giuffre. When pressed by reporter asked if he meant Epstein trafficked underage girls from his resort, Trump responded vaguely, suggesting one of them worked at spa, which he claimed was the best spa in America. Back to the direction, despite being heavily referenced in the absent documents, Trump's name was systematically removed by the FBI. In May, he was reportedly warned that his name appeared throughout the files, but now Trump is calling the entire scandal a hoax, even going so far as to fire Marine Comey, the lead prosecutor on Epstein case, and absurdly blaming her father James Comey for inventing it. Adding to the controversy, Trump then sent his former criminal defense attorney to meet the Ghislaine Maxwell and grant her immunity, limited immunity. Now Maxwell is refusing to speak to Congress unless he granted additional immunity, essentially making demands from behind bars. Congress so far has rejected her terms. Put it all together, Maxwell gets partial immunity. She moved to a minimum security facility she should not even qualify for. Trump name is scrambled from the absent files and our news. CBS News investigation building a report from Wired is being to shine more light on all of it. Remember when Wired analyzed the absent surveillance footage and discovered about 2 minutes and 30 seconds had been tampered with? We are new forensic audit page CBS News reveals the manipulation goes far beyond that. According to their analysis, the footage does not even show absent actual cell block. In fact, if you watch the full video closely, there is a moment where a computer mouse or cursor appear, meaning the footage was not from a direct camera feed at all. It was someone recording a computer screen. CBS findings support earlier reporting that the original surveillance video from Epson cell was deleted or destroyed, something that was acknowledged during the first Trump administration. So, what exactly were we watching all this time? According to CBS, not only was the angle wrong, it was not even absent unit in the video. That raises serious question about the authenticity of the footage and whether it was deliberately manipulated to mislead investigators and public. CBS went to further by digitally reconstructing the special housing unit where Epson was held using diagrams and description from 2023 official report. Their investigation concluded that the surveillance video does little to support the claim made later by federal official. In fact, CBS News uncovered serious inconsistence between the reports and the footage, raising serious doubts about the accuracy of witness statement and the overall thoroughness of the government investigation. Now, let's hear from one of the victims, attorney Spencer Cummins. Here's what he had to say. Let's play the clip.
She's an evil person. At its core, there is nothing other than just evil in this woman. She is the one that was actively out recruiting young girls to bring them to Epstein. And I've said this before, but without Ghislaine Maxwell, there would have been no Jeffrey Epstein. You know, you have an elderly or older gentleman, white hair. He's not going to convince young 14 and 15-year-old girls to come to his home for doing what he did. But if you have an educated, well-dressed, English accented woman approaching these young girls and promising them that they could be models and they're beautiful, their guard is down. So, she is more guilty, if not just as certainly guilty as Epstein. So the idea of giving her any kind of immunity at all is just repugnant to the victim.
And here he is again. Let's play this next clip where he talks further about Donald Trump and his comments regarding Virginia Joffrey and the young girl who were allegedly taken from Mar-a-Lago and later sex trafficked. Go ahead and play the clip.
President say that, Spencer. What questions does that bring up for you?
Well, I can tell you one thing. First of all, in cross-examining people for 30 years, okay, I can tell you that he didn't want to answer that question. Notice that when he's first asked about it, he says, I don't know. And then he realizes his brain starts working and thinking through it, thinking they're going to be able to figure this out, and I don't want to look stupid, so I better tell them. And then he amends his answer later. That happens when someone's trying to hide the truth. That happens when I cross-examine people, and you just have to keep pushing like that reporter did. We know that Virginia worked at the spa, and she was one of the ones that Epstein used in his sex trafficking scheme, that he traded her to various different high-profile individuals around the world. That has never been publicly admitted before. And she had to fight during her litigation because they were claiming that she was lying about all of that. We now know from the words of the president himself that Virginia was right all along and that she was trafficked out of Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah, the late Virginia Giuffre, who died by suicide, we should mention, as a number of victims of Jeffrey Epstein have. Spencer Cummins, thank you so much for speaking with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on.
Virginia Giuffre recently died by suicide. As a teenager, she worked at spa at a Mar-a-Lago homeless. At the time, she got the job when she was around 16-year-old, serving as a towel girl. One day, Jeffrey Epstein came to the resort, noticed her working, and said something like, "Oh, you work for Donald? I am friend of his. Want to work for me too?" He then lured her in and began traffic her. Here's what Virginia's brother had to say. Let's play the clip.
She wasn't stolen. She was preyed upon at his property, at President Trump's property. And I think it's very important that we don't treat it like stolen. Seems very impersonal. It feels very much like an object. And these survivors are not objects. Women are not objects. What goes through my mind is that it's time to protect survivors, and it's time to protect the young women and our future generation of young women. So no, she wasn't stolen. She was preyed upon. And it certainly makes you kind of ask the question, how much he knew during that time, right? Even a couple of years later, even after he, I believe he had stated something along the lines of cutting off communication or kicking him out. He described Jeffrey Epstein as somebody who really enjoyed being around young women. And so she was preyed upon. She wasn't stolen. That's a predator that came and took her and did absolutely horrible things to her and so many other women out there.
Oh, and just yesterday, Donald Trump announced a new initiative focused on children's sport and physical fitness. And guess who Trump chose to lead the initiative? That's right, Lawrence Taylor. The same Lawrence Taylor who pleaded guilty to charge related to the sexual assault for 16-year-old girl. Donald Trump appointed a convicted sexual offender to head a program focused on children. Just to jog your memory, here's what Trump said on the plane about Virginia Jeffrey and Epstein stealing from him. Because disturbingly, Trump referred to these underage girls as if they were his property. Let's play the clip.
Mr. President, Epstein has a certain reputation, obviously. Just curious, were some of the workers that were taken from you, were some of them young women?
With some of them.
Were some of them young women?
Well, I don't want to say, but everyone knows the people that were taken, and it was the concept of taking people that work for me is bad, but that story's been pretty well out there, and the answer is yes, they were.
Yes, they were young.
Yeah.
What did they do?
In the spa.
In the spa.
Yeah, it's people that work in the spa. I have a great spa, one of the best spas in the world at Mar-a-Lago, and people were taken out of the spa, hired by him. In other words, gone. And other people would come and complain, this guy is taking people from the spa. I didn't know that. And then when I heard about it, I told him, I said, listen, we don't want you taking our people, whether it was spa or not spa. I don't want him taking people. And he was fine. And then not too long after that, he did it again. And I said, out of here.
Mr. President, did one of those stolen, persons, that include Virginia Jeffrey?
I don't know. I think she worked at the spa. I think so. I think that was one of the people. Yeah. He stole her. And by the way, she had no complaints about us, as you know. None whatsoever.